Patrick and I are going to present our project in Green Square, but before we get started, I want to put the project in some sort of context. Patrick, you sent an email to one of my colleagues about your vision, and that was Tracy from Youth Health. And I think it must have come at the right time, because we were just starting to do some work on healthy homes and neighbourhoods and on the development of RedLink, which some of you might have heard about, and strengthening the work that we were doing in the South Sydney precinct at that time, which includes Redfern, Waterloo, Darlington, Alexandria, Erskineville, and of course now also Zetland, Green Square, Rosebery, from our district's point of view. The Healthy Homes and Neighbourhoods project had a vision of supporting vulnerable families with children aged 0 to 17. And a lot of our pathways up until that stage had been in the early years, in the first 2,000 days, working through the perinatal space, working with our referrals from our FACS colleagues, and we had outreach school projects to primary schools. So this was a great opportunity to work in the 10 to 17 year age space. So, and also it was a good opportunity to explore the health education knowledge transfer, which is what we're going to talk about today.
Thanks, John. Hi, everyone. And yeah, just like to acknowledge, I do live, work and play on Gadigal land, so just to acknowledge everyone here today, including elders past and present. And as John said, I did send an email, I think 2013-14, to then manage at local youth block, with this vision. And it's very much centred around what we hear today, and that is, imagine if there was a school that understood the neurobiology of connection, understood relational health, understood psychoeducation, understood health literacy, and the 6+ hours a day that children were sent to school, the 5 days a week, 200+ days a year of that many people in a school setting, providing that amount of care and integrating those approaches, neuroscience approaches, into lessons. What would that look like? And this is pretty much the Green Square School Health Education Allied Health Wraparound model, and this is a little bit of how we do things. I'm conscious of the time, so we don't have a large amount of time to delve really quite in depth, but a little snapshot of just what it looks like. And firstly, the Ngaramadhi space is this interdisciplinary team. It consists of a consulting psychiatrist, senior psychologist, who happens to be Aboriginal, which provides a lot of cultural support as well, psychologist, paediatrician, OT, speech path, social worker, art therapist, nurse specialist, teachers. We all work together on the trauma-informed language. We use clinical tools around relational health, cue neurobiology of connection, and we just have all that amazing transfer of knowledge across health, allied health and education that's happening in classrooms in the Ngaramadhi space. And yeah, we're just trialling these new clinical tools to assess relational. Everybody, I just wanted to take you to our Ngaramadhi space, fast forward clinical space, and introduce you to some of the team and a little bit about the work that they do. Is there any way to fast forward this? Coming through into our demountable classroom that used to be a
No, that doesn't
class.
work.
What's your role here?
I'm one of the nurses here, so we see young people.
So Jeanette's part of the Youth Block Health Alliance, and she provides a lot of outreach care to our young people for all
Awesome,
the
thank you. Hi,
of
Gemma. We have
factors.
this coming through here. This is our OT space that I'll talk a little bit more about in a sec. This is our nurses space and some of the interview rooms. Hi, Susie. How's it going? I'm just doing a quick film for some of the local health team, and just wanted to know if you could give me like 10 seconds of your time in terms of your role here.
Now?
Yes.
Not video now. Let me think about it.
I'll come back.
Alright.
Hi, Lauren.
Hello.
How's it going? This is our counsellor, Lauren, and Sarah, also counsellor here. This is your space, your intern, sorry. What's your role here in the Ngaramadhi space?
So, as a school counsellor, I work with the students by counselling, providing psychometric assessments, And then we also sit on the paediatric appointments as well and follow up on the holistic recommendations between education and health.
Awesome, thank you. See ya.
Can you go open the bathroom for me?
Susie, do you have a couple of words in your role as paediatrician?
What's my role? So I think paediatrician's role is to work with the rest of the team to try and have a really good understanding of the young people in terms of their general health, well-being, and also social emotional health, and to try and put that together for the professionals working with the young person so that we can be more responsive to their needs.
Awesome, thank you.
All right, apologies for that extra bit of time, but in a nutshell, Susie pretty much coordinates the entirety of interventions with our school counsellor across the health, allied health, education domains. And you can imagine for our most vulnerable families in the community, it can be a bit of a blitzkrieg if we all sort of work in different silos. So we just work out what's most appropriate for the family at that particular time and work out a plan from there. This is a little bit about the why we formed it. John, would you like to talk to that a little bit?
Yes, certainly. So this was a way of really building on educational opportunities and using those to provide access to both health and social support services. So we're wrapping health and social support around these young people who've got challenges in their lives. And we're using this as an interagency, multidisciplinary approach, and with both combined joint planning, review and implementation of their individual learning plans. And also what we've often forgot about in the early part of the project, this is a way of connecting health practitioners with educational practitioners. So we're learning education language and they're learning health language. So it's enabling a transfer of skills also from this special school, Patrick can talk more about that, out into the mainstream school. So this school has a lot of feeder schools. They come in for 4 days out of the 5 and they stay for
12 to 18 months.
12 to 18 months, but they've got their own home school. So there's a great opportunity there to be connecting with the home schools. It's also given an opportunity for the families. So while it might look very young person centred here, those young people are in a context of their families, and we're still working on that family connection space. And finally, as you'll see in the later slides, Patrick has been able to build what we learnt this morning from Liz about the early brain and about neuroscience principles, so that the kids themselves are actually learning that stuff, aren't they?
Yeah, that's right. So the approach of psychoeducation for teachers to understand that, and I'm very passionate about this belief that education is fundamentally the most appropriate, developmentally significant process for our young people, irrespective of everything else. If they come to school every day and they get access to appropriate learning and they stay in the class for as long as possible to complete that learning cycle, that is the game changer for them long term. That is the best therapy. That is ultimately, I guess, adds to a lot of health outcomes. So that wraparound model helps teachers understand the stress cycle, understands different techniques. I touched on art therapy, occupational therapy, speech pathology. We have all these play-based ways of recognising, okay, we need a brain break in this lesson. Let's go do some play-based activities that are therapy-based. We don't say the kids are therapy-based, but helps the kids maintain their time in class and what we call increase their window of tolerance, which means their resilience. Their resilience to maintain stress, and the stress of learning is stressful, right? You could succeed, you could not succeed. That resilience, we keep them in class for as long as possible. And I'm just going to show you the next slide is this up-down inverse triangle. We teach to it. This is the clinical perspective of it. But basically, down the bottom is your brainstem. Up the top is your cortex, neocortex. We need to be accessing the neocortex to learn. Teachers understand that. The kids learn about it. But we also know that all the information that we're currently processing pretty much goes through your brainstem first, and then gets ordered around, and hopefully, it gets up to your cortex, and we can make sense of the information, store it, retrieve it, etc. If there's any dysregulation down that brainstem area, there's a lot of trauma or stress or whatever the case may be, you need to regulate that area of the brain first. And so a lot of the OT and speech path activities we do help kids regulate, as well as the art therapy stuff, regulate that lower area, the brainstem, diencephalon, limbic system area, to then promote learning. And we do a lot of pre-post test stuff for the kids. Hey, let's try this activity now. Oh, that was really difficult. Okay, let's do this play-based activity now. Try it again. Actually, hang on, I'm thinking a lot more clearly. So a lot of that stuff's emerging, and I'll give you an example of some of the things we use within the occupational therapy approach. Some of the stuff that a video I'm going to show you is things we do in the classroom. Some of it's in that Ngaramadhi space, up to that swing and all that kind of stuff. It's just a quick 2-minute snapshot of what it looks like in our school with OT. Working with proprioception, working with vestibular systems, working with ways to plug in input to allow the nervous system to regulate as quickly as possible. Okay, orienting yourself to sensors, requiring balance, requiring pressure, as you'll see coming up. All these things aid the brain to align itself. The kids love this, by the way, and if you want to come down and jump into the swing, I'm telling you, it's better than a cup of coffee. Accessing the parasympathetic nervous system through extending the exhale breath, obviously, as well as that, accessing the core and all other aspects of movement. 6'5", big, tough kids beg to be patted down with this ball. It produces all the nice hormones, reduces cortisol levels. That infinity walk helps integrate knowledge into the brain, so we often do word banks with that infinity walk. I wrestle with the kids a lot in my office. If they come down for disciplinary reasons, I'm wrestling with them with those balls to get them to access their core strength, to reduce all the anxiety that they often present with. There is a whole series of training that comes with it for students and teachers, so it might look a little bit obtuse, but the research underpinning it is very, very effective, and a lot of the work we're seeing coming out of some of the kids who are hypervigilant, a lot of them love being wrapped in class. If they come from a difficult playground experience, they might just be wrapped, or they might find something that actually gets them into that fetal position that brings pressure on their body as well. And a couple of minutes of that for some of the kids with sensory needs, and then they've just basically regulated back into the classroom. And we're trying to, with homeschools, explain to them, look, do you fight tooth and nail to teach the curriculum, and when you know your class is like dysregulated, or do you spend a little bit of time integrating some of these things that might seem a bit strange at the start, but in all essence have a research underpinning, fit within the principles of neuroscience, and actually your kids will probably be open to learning better than they were prior to that activity. So how do we do it in class on top of that? There is psychoeducation. Our teachers teach to this every week. Our kids are involved in the theory of it. They strategize, they problem solve, they're looking at the theory of neuroscience, they're understanding the different areas of the brain. We're going on excursions, doing things like monitoring the heart rate in different environments. They're understanding the relationship between heart rate, the nervous system and the brain, understanding how using breath and movement techniques and things like that reduce your heart rate, improve your breath, and therefore promote alertness. Kids are being assessed on it. They're using it to demonstrate back at their home school, and a lot of the feedback from them is they wish this stuff was taught in their mainstream schools. So part of what John and I's vision is to choose a local area comprehensive school, in this case Alexandria Park Community School, K-12. We're working with them over a 3-year period to develop psychoeducation in the school, similar to what I've showed you here today, and hopefully over time that will build the health literacy and improve the educational outcomes for particularly our most vulnerable kids. So to what extent does it improve engagement with school? Well, definitely the trend in student attendance and behaviour is improved. We're seeing reductions in suspensions. We're seeing improved access to a lot of the things that we've trialled here in the previous videos and explaining. The kids are actively seeking out OT, actively seeking out counsellors, the psychoeducation. A lot of that stuff is helping to improve student behaviour. A lot of the feedback from teachers, be it our own staff, or I think we've trained over 100 teachers now, over 30 counsellors. We're presenting at the many conferences now. The feedback is enormously positive. It's a real highlight of this process from an educational perspective, and it's for our Aboriginal community. From the elders I'm working with, they're saying to us, this is something we feel is culturally relevant to us. This is appropriate. This way of teaching and understanding is certainly having quite an impact for their working with education and the community. And finally, well, not finally, is it? Almost. A big thing for us is the wraparound for families. Obviously a child does not live in isolation. Their families are their whole world, and so it's working with our families to improve. And I think, in essence, we're, health has all these amazing resources, and obviously you guys are geared so well to support families, but we have the trust. We have the families, trust us, and so we're saying, look, it's appropriate for you to go and access this health service based on the feedback. And as I've seen today, really that conversation around your child's development. So it's really focused on learning. Look, your child is not succeeding for whatever reason. They're inattentive for whatever reason. They're frustrated. Let's go and see this Ngaramadhi Space team and work out what can happen. And a lot of great outcomes, and I think a lot of important family connections, and that health literacy is growing as a result. So what's next for us in the Ngaramadhi space? We're really keen on trialling these neuroscience tools, and a lot of it relates to relational health and that neurobiology of connection. There is metrics out there that they're not at that final stage of peer reviewed, but they're sort of heading that way at their final stage, and there's a lot of organisations, be it health or Child Protection Service and whatnot, are using these metrics to chart relational health, because the correlation between relational health and ability to learn is enormous. Because when your brain is stressed, it can't access that cortex area to learn. And if you have low relational health, like Sophia's told us today, you're stressed out. So we work on increasing relational health in different ways. Those professional learning modules we're continuing to develop. That support with families is something for me that I took home today, which is really important, is focusing on child development as opposed to parenting, so to speak, as a really important take-home point for me. But we're working with University of New South Wales within the educational realm to target rural and remote communities, some of the communities that would really benefit from this way of working. And in the next year and years ahead, the Gonski Institute has funded us to choose some schools within rural and remote communities and work as sister schools in that process. And the last thing, and I'm like, working in a special school is fantastic, but I also feel as though if the system was set up better, we would support our kids and families in their mainstream schools. And that's just where I'm hand on my heart, what I wish it was the case. So the last point is, can we use all these processes and practices to hopefully skill up home schools to hang on to their mob and be able to work with them in their local community rather than coming to us? That's basically, in a nutshell, a snapshot.
Thank you very much, everybody, for coming in.